So section 1.9. Basically, it's just formulas. And there's 3 formulas we're going to look at. We're going to look at distance formula first. After we do distance, we'll do midpoint. And then after we do midpoint, we'll do the formula for a circle. And with the distance formula, just like any time you do the distance, if you're going from here to Gulf Shores, it's between 2 points, right? So distance formula, same thing here. This is always going to be that you're doing the distance between 2 points because that's the way it's going to set up. Your 2 points are going to be x1, y1, and then x2 and y2. And here's your formula. Okay, and again, if the logic part of you says, well, could we put the first x first and the second x second? You could do that. So either one of these two is good. And again, usually I tend to put the first thing first and the second thing second, just for me to kind of make it make sense. So either one of those two that you want to do, either one's fine. Okay, and we'll start with a pretty straightforward one. Here's 2 points. Tell me what we have. And then after that, we'll change it up just a little bit. Because they always give you one that's pretty straightforward, and then they give you one that's got a little bit of a twist to it. Okay, so there's your 2 points. Let's find the distance. And again, labeling, I hate to say labeling is important, but again, I've seen people miss this problem just because they don't put the numbers in the right place. So this is your x1 and y1 because that's the first order pair you're given. There's your x2 and your y2. And again, for me, I'm going to go back to this formula just because I like putting the first things first. So x1 is -2 minus x2, which is 3. y1 is -6 minus y2, which is -4. Okay, so with -2 minus 3, that's just a -5. With the minus negative here, you do have to take that minus negative and make that a plus. So really it's -6 plus 4 squared. So that would be plus -2 squared. Okay, -5 squared is 25. -2 squared is 4. 25 plus 4 is 29. And they'll either let you leave it this way. I think sometimes they may have you do both, where that you can leave the square root of 29. They may tell you to give me a decimal answer where you round it off to the nearest 1, 2, 3 places, whatever it is. If you round this thing off, that should be 5.38. And they'll tell you 2, 3 decimal point, whatever it is they're going to ask for. And whichever one it is, that's fine. I think test-wise, I don't care, either one. You know, decimal, I'll just say, tell me what the answer is. Okay, now here's where they change it just a little bit to make you kind of, they're making you do the distance formula, but they're also making you review some stuff that's coming up later on. So it's kind of 2 things in one here. So first point is 3 square root of 3 square root of 5. Second point is negative square root of 3. And 4 square root of 5. Again, take 2 extra seconds, 5 extra seconds, and go back in and label it just to make sure you've got everything correct there. So it's x1 minus x2 squared. Y1 is square root of 5 minus y2, which is 4 square root of 5. It will. Yeah. Okay, now if you're doing this one by hand, the one thing you might want to do is where you have a square root that's by itself, you may want to go back and put a 1 on there. So again, for this one, you've got the minus negative, so really that's a plus. So this is really 3 square root of 3 plus square root of 3. And this one's, pretty much straightforward like it is there. All right, now here's the big thing. If you haven't done anything with radicals in a while, which we'll get to those a little bit more later on, but this is where they kind of preview it just to throw something at you. If you're adding and subtracting radicals, the radical part of it is basically like a variable. So where you have square root of 3, you can think about that as being an x. If you have a different number, that's almost like a y variable. That's a different variable. So this one is really 3x plus 1x, which would be 4x, but instead of x, you're going to be using the square root there. So this is really going to be 4 square root of 3 squared. For this one, 1 minus 4 would be negative 3 square root of 5 squared. So, and again, the big thing they're really doing on this part is that we'll do some stuff with radicals a few chapters down the road. They're really throwing this out here at you just to remind you, okay, if you do get radicals, you add or subtract the numbers that's in front, and whatever the radicals are that's there, as long as it's the same, those radicals don't change, because they're basically like a variable, if you want to think about it that way. Okay. Now, if you're, again, doing this one by hand, if you do 4 square root of 3 squared, that really means it's 4 square root of 3 times 4 square root of 3. 4 times 4 is 16. When you do 3 times 3, that's the square root of 9. And the square root of 9 is 3. That really means that that first part is square root of 48. Okay, for the second part, we'll do this one in blue, just so we can tell the difference of the two. It's the same thing. You're going to do negative 3 square root of 5 times negative 3 square root of 5. We do a negative times negative, that makes that a positive. 3 times 3 is 9. We do square root of 5 times square root of 5, that's the square root of 25. But that's square root of 25 should just be 5. So 9 times 5 is 45. Then finally we get to put it all together. That's square root of 93. And if they ask for that as a decimal number, that should be 9.64. Okay, for all that goes through the distance formula, with everything and all the options that was there, midpoint is really the easier one of the two. Because the and it's still between 2 points. You're going to take whatever the two x values are. This time, actually, the formula is always in order. It's x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and then y1 plus y2 divided by 2. No square roots, no squares, no, it's just take the two numbers. You don't have to change any signs. There's no subtraction in this one. Take the numbers, plug it in, add it, whatever, do the signs, what it says, and cut it in half. It's the easier one of the two options that we're looking at. Okay, let's go with negative 2, negative 8, and then negative 6, 2. And this, again, this formula is a lot easier than the distance formula because there's not near as much stuff as what you have to do. one simple little thing, take 2 extra seconds. The first point is x1, y1, second point's x2 and y2. Okay, so plugging them in. Again, you don't have to change anything. There's no changing of signs. You just drop them straight in there. -2 plus -6 divided by 2. And then -8 plus 2 divided by 2. -2 plus -6 is -8. -8 plus 2 is -6. And then just dividing both of those by 2, -4, -3. Okay, so that one's a lot more straightforward, a lot quicker if you're doing that one by hand to run through the numbers. There's just not as much to that one. Now, we'll do one with they go ahead and give you another radical problem, so we'll go through that one next. Is everybody good there? Everybody still? Okay, so for this one, square root of 18, -4, and then square root of 2, 4. Okay, so x1, y1, x2, y2. Now, here's the one catch with this one when you plug it in. If you have square root of 18 plus square root of 2 divided by 2. This one is -4 plus 4 divided by 2. Okay, now, here's the catch with this one. Here's where this one is a little bit different than what we did in the last part. When you do the radicals on this one is square root of 18, the other one is square root of 2. You do not add those together because before you can add and subtract radicals, they have to be the same thing on the inside. Yeah. So for this one, you've got to take the 18 and you've got to simplify the square root of 18. Now, for this one, because this one's already square root of 2, they're kind of giving you a hint here that this one's going to have a 2 in it. So if you take 18 and just rewrite it as something times 2, then the answer would hopefully just jump out at you, because 18 is the same thing as 9 times 2. And if you take the square root of 9, that's just 3. So 18 is really the same thing as 3 square root of 2. So if you take that 18 that's here, whatever the bigger number is, you're going to have to break it down. And if this number winds up being something different than this one, then you're going to have to take this one and break it down. But I think this one, it should just be one problem that you have to break down. And one small thing again, that really is a 1 square root of 2. So it's 3 square root of 2 plus 1 square root of 2, that's going to be 4 square root of 2. Okay, and if you forget about the 2 for just a second, the square root of 2, that this problem is really 4 divided by 2. So that makes that 2 square root of 2 for the x-coordinate. Okay, the y-coordinate, -4 plus 4 is 0. If you do 0 divided by 2, that's just 0. Okay, so that one, they give you more addition and subtraction to work with. The trick on that one is that you have to take one of the numbers and break it down. Before you can add and subtract, you have to have it so that the same numbers here are inside the radical. If they're different, you've got to take them and break them down until eventually they get to where they're the same. All right, and one more midpoint question. No radicals, but they do give you fractions. Again, just take a few seconds and go back and go through that one. Okay, so plugging them in, it's negative 7 over 2 plus negative 5 over 2. That whole thing divided by 2. And then for the y's, 3 over 2 plus negative 11 over 2. All that divided by 2. Okay, so then and again, just don't worry about the 2's for a minute, just worry about the top part. If it's negative 7 over 2 plus negative 5 over 2, denominators will stay the same. That's going to make it negative 12 over 2. But on the top part, when you do negative 12 divided by 2, that's really just negative 6. And on the right-hand side with the y part, 3 plus negative 11, that's negative 8 over 2. Over 2. And same thing, that's negative 8 over 2, that's really just a negative 4. Okay, so finally at the end, negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3, and negative 4 divided by 2 would be just a negative 2. Okay, now let me throw a what if at you. Let's just say that, because sometimes this will happen. Let's say that you had done this problem instead of being negative 12 over 2. Let's just say that was a what if we had negative 11 over 2 divided by 2. Because that worked out great because everything came out to be whole numbers, but what if you get 1 and you get negative 11 over 2 divided by 2? This is where you have to go back to your 6th, 7th grade math. That you can do it a couple of different ways. But for this one, if it's negative 11 over 2 divided by 2, you almost want to rewrite this one. Because that would be negative 11 over 2 divided by 2. Because you've got the upper fraction, because if it's top divided by the bottom, just rewrite it as that. It's negative 11 over 2 divided by 2. Then you get to do the old keep, change, flip, right? Keep this the same, change the division, multiplication, and flip this thing upside down. But this one's not a fraction, so really you've got to think about that as being 2 over 1. So if you do keep, change, flip, that's negative 11 over 2 times 1/2, which will make it negative 11 over 4. I was going to say the shortcut is that if you have just a fraction divided by a number, you can just multiply your two denominators together. So that's kind of your shortcut on that one that you can do. But technically that's the process sometimes. Once you do enough of those, you kind of start seeing the shortcut. But if you do get something where this number doesn't come out to be a perfect whole number, where you can divide it by 2, then basically, yeah, you can take these two denominators and multiply them together. Because if you take a half and cut it in half, then that makes it a fourth. All right, and one last formula. I would say this is the easiest one of the two. This is for circles. Now, it's the easier one of the two, but at the same time, it's also one of those where it can be the easiest one to rush through and make a mistake because it's pretty straightforward. It's x minus h squared, y minus k squared equals r squared. Now, here's the only thing you have to worry about when you're going through this one. The only thing that you're going to have to worry about is h and k, and that is the center coordinates. And, of course, r, that's your radius. And all they're going to ask you to do is one of two things. They're either going to give you an equation, and from that equation, they're going to ask you, all right, what's the center, what's the radius? Or they're going to do the opposite. They're going to give you the center and the radius and say, what's the equation? So this one, it's really easy, but at the same time, you just have to be careful not to make simple little mistakes. So let's say we're going to find the center and radius. Mm-hmm. So all you're going to do, and again, the only thing you're looking for is the H value, the K value, and really the R value that you're kind of looking at for this one. Now here's the one thing, the way this one is set up. When you're finding the center, the only thing you have to do with these two numbers that's here is take these two numbers out, but the only thing you have to do is you just have to change the signs. So to find the center, it's the easiest thing in the world. Take these two numbers out, but change the signs, because this was a -3, so that means the center is going to be 3. This was a +4, change it to a -4. That's it. That's all you got to do. Okay, the only thing on this part is this is your, not just the radius, but that's r squared. So to find the radius, yeah, just got to square root both sides. That's it. That's all you got to do. Now, again, it's really easy, so don't rush through it, because sometimes the temptation is to kind of rush through because it's that easy. But as long as you remember to change the signs and square root it, that's all you have to do. Sure. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. There we go.
Okay, so I see it says x minus h squared.
Mm-hmm.
Let's scroll back down. It says x minus 3 squared. So,
Right.
like, since it's -3, why did you change you didn't change the sign?
Right.
I was saying it shouldn't be 3, but okay. So
Yeah, because if you kind of look at this one, basically you have to have a minus in the formula. Right, because it'd be y minus -4, right? So this one is basically x minus, yeah, because it's a -3 and a +4. So, yeah, if you pull it out or take, kind of like when we did when we were finding the translations when we started shifting it up and down, and left and right, how that if it was inside the parentheses, you always went the opposite direction. This one's still set on that same thing. If it's -3, you would actually move it 3 spaces in the opposite direction. So it's still inside the parentheses, so you still, even when you pull out. Okay. Oh, sorry, hang on. Gotta put x first. Okay, so let's go x squared plus y plus 3 squared equals 2. Okay, you've got x squared. There's no number there, right? So if there's no number, then it just defaults to 0. Because if you did x plus 0 squared, then it would still be the same as x squared because it's 0. This one just changed that to a -3, and there's your center. Okay, and with the 2, again, that's r squared. So when you square root both sides, and this is right up against the bottom of the page here, that one, they should let you leave that answer as the square root of 2 for the radius. Now, most of the time it's going to come out to be a whole number like this one, but occasionally, if you get a squared answer, just leave it as square root of whatever is there. Okay, so there's the first option. They give you the equation, say, all right, tell me what the numbers are. And again, all you're going to do is take whatever numbers you have for x and y, pull them out, just change the signs, and then square root this number. The only other thing they'll ask you to do is go in reverse order. They'll say, all right, here's the circle, here's the center, and here's the radius. And they'll say, find the equation. Okay, and it's almost just as easy as going in the opposite direction, is that when you plug these in, just remember to change the signs. So this will be x minus 4 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals, and again, that 4 is the radius, so you have to do r squared. So that would have to equal 16. Okay, one more. Let's say the radius, our center is at 0, 8, and then the radius is square root of 9. And again, change the signs. Now, with the 0, there's no sign to change, and again, because it's nothing, you don't have to put anything, so that just becomes x squared. With the y, make it y minus 8 squared. And if r is 81, you square both numbers. Square root of 9 squared would actually be square root of 81. But if you square root of 81, that's just going to be 9. Okay. And that's about as tricky as they can get, is that the last number might be a square root, and if you square the square root, they should just cancel and just give you that number.